welcome back to the channel. We are continuing this series. First of all, my name is Michelle with vinvonaly, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. I hope you stick around, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. So we are in this series of the tools that I use for Bible journaling, but also for much more, as you've seen on this channel. So I've titled today's let's just say episode as coloring, because it's going to be broad. I didn't know how to encapsulate everything as far as inks and alcohol markers and coloring pencils, and I'm not sure what else I'm going to share, but this is going to be a two-parter. So today we're going to be dealing specifically with inks. We'll also, I just reminded myself I forgot another ink that I use. We're also going to be dealing with the alcohol markers and coloring pencils. So I have to break it up into two parts. So this will be part one, because it can get quite lengthy when going through all of this. So without any further delay, let's get into this. Okay, so since I already have them on here, let's talk about the Distress Oxide and the Distress ink. These are a Tim Holtz brand created by Ranger. And some of you may be already familiar with it. It's quite popular in the crafting community, in the Bible journaling community, you know. So you may be familiar with it already. I'm just going to go over some key points with them and then just give you just a quick differentiation between the ink and the oxide. And I'm going to link a video for Tim Holtz where he goes into greater detail about the distinction between these two, because I couldn't do that today. I don't think I'm qualified to, and I believe he does a much better job than I do since he created it, right? Right. Okay. So for the oxide, the Distress Oxide, let's talk about that. The Distress Oxide only comes in the 3x3. This is a 3x3 pad. And these are felt pads that are in here. So let me bring it up close so you can look. So it has a plastic casing and cover, but there is a felt pad that's on the inside, which is loaded with the oxide. The oxide is actually a fusion of a dye and a pigment. Okay, it's a fusion of dye and pigment. So that's what the oxide is. And again, it only comes in the 3x3, which is this size. The Distress ink is a water-based dye and is translucent. Okay, so the oxide is going to be a little more opaque, not totally opaque, but much more opaque because it is a fusion of the dye and pigment. This is just a water-based dye, so therefore it is translucent. That's the ink. And the ink comes in these minis, and I don't even know the size. I think it's like a 1x1 inch. So it comes in these minis. It's also on a felt pad, but it also comes in the 3x3. So you can get the Distress ink in the mini, and you can get it in this size. But the oxide only comes in the larger 3x3 size. Just so we're clear on that, okay? So those are the distinctions between them. And they come, I mean, I couldn't begin to go through the colors. These are just a few. And I would say I'm a novice, but some people are like, no, you're not, because you see me using it all the time. But these are just the colors that I'm starting out in. This is my these are like my colors that I love, but I'm collecting. I'm growing my color collection, but these are the colors that I have in both the oxide and in the Distress ink. I believe if you ask me what my favorite color is, I would say it's the oh gosh, how could I forget the name? It's some antique linen. I love antique linen. I don't know why, but I love antique linen. I believe if you mix that antique linen with it's like a little bit of a chocolate color. I can't remember that other color. It just gives that beautiful antique kind of marbled looking effect, but that's my favorite color. But anyway, you didn't come to hear all of that. Now, in applying these inks, and I'm going to show you what it looks like on paper with the ink and the oxide. So let me get out my sketchbook, and this book that I'm using is a mixed media Canson. Canson's a very good brand. There are other brands, Stadler. There are other brands that you can purchase from Michael's and other art stores, but this is a Canson. It's it takes acrylic, it takes watercolor, it takes pen, and it takes pencil. So it's very porous paper that is able to receive water, because if it's taking watercolor, it has to be able to absorb. So it's very porous paper. So okay, this is actually my son. My son's an artist, so he had given me this. So I've got that. I've got a couple drawings up in here. My watercolors and stuff like that. Yeah, I've been in here playing around with some things, but I want to get a blank page so that we can see what the inks look like. So I'm taking the Distress Oxide just as it is, and I'm rubbing it on the page. I'm going to give it a press so that you can see. Now I want you to bring it up to the camera so you can see with the oxide, it kind of sits on the top of the paper and it has a wet look to it. I don't know if you can see that, if it shows on the camera, but it kind of sits on top of the paper. This is porous paper, so it's going to take a little time for it to settle down in there, but do you see how it sits on top? Okay, and then this is the ink, and these are both the same color. They're Pick Raspberry, so it's Pick Raspberry in the ink, and then this is the Pick Raspberry in the oxide. So I'm going to press that to the paper, and this one you can see is a lot less than this. This one is still sitting on the top of the paper. This one is like set into the paper. So you see the difference? And then I won't go into it, but then they give off an effect when you wet them. So there are so many things that you can do with the inks. You can create patterns and different things with it. This came in a set of 3. It is from Ranger. It is a mist, and you can just fill it with water, and it makes it easy. So when you're doing your projects, you can just, do you see how I'm spraying the water? I didn't put more water in here, but look at that. Look at that. So look at how that looks. There are so many things. So you can just imagine that if you take your oxide or your ink and you mix just different colors, the different effects that you can get when you wet them on the paper. And you can even do like how I'm doing, where I'm just like letting turning the pad straight up, or your paper, and you're just letting the ink run. Then you can get different effects. But like I said, I'm not going to get into the effects. Tim Holtz does a way better job than I would, so I will link that video in the description below. But I just wanted to show you what that looks like. But for us Bible journalers, you may want to get into like the effects and stuff, but for the most part, we may be using it to color a page, or to just color in a stencil. I will show you how you use that. So for right now, let me just get rid of this one, because I will mess up my hands if I don't remove that. Okay. So for a stencil, here's and I want to show you how you apply it. So this is a cloud stencil that I included in one of the monthly kits. So I'm gonna get, I don't know if I should use I'm going to use the oxide. First, let me show you the applicators that you can use to get the oxide or the ink onto your paper. Let me do that first. You can use dollar store makeup brushes. Simple as dollar store makeup brushes, but with all of these applicators, you can get, it gives you a different effect based on using something like this, which has a soft bristle, as opposed to using something like the daubers, And I got this one from Amazon, which came with a bunch of these removable sponges, which you can just wash. And I got this one from scrapbook.com, which came with a domed sponge. So you see how the sponge is rounded at the top. So you can see how these will give you a different effect. Okay. And then I also have this pack. And this, I thought it was just like one like sponge at the top of these, but these are actually tight woven bristles on these applicators, these brush applicators. If I can get this open, we will see how the ink goes down with each of these applicators. Okay. I'm going to take the blue since we're using the blue. And this was inexpensive. I believe this was like about $10, and everything I will link here. Everything I got here is from Amazon, except for the scrapbook.com dauber, but all of this was from Amazon. So this is a pack of, what is it, 10, 2, 4, 6, 8, yep, pack of 10. And like I said, I thought this was just like a sponge, but these are just it's very, very soft to the touch. So the ends of the bristles are very, very soft. It's like almost like cotton, but these are very tight woven bristles. I was like, wow. Can you imagine how many bristles they have to put in this? Anyway, moving along. Anyway, so I've got 3 types of the makeup brushes. This one here, I believe, is like the eyebrow brush. This one, I don't know I have very few applicators that I use for my makeup, so I don't know all of them. This is more like I know this is the blush. I don't know what this one is, but this one is like the eyebrow one. But you see how this one is flat and tightly together. This one's a little looser, but still a little tighter together. And this one is very loose. You'll see how it gives a different application of the ink or the oxide on the paper. Well, I'm going to be using just the oxide, but it's going to be the same thing for either one that you use. So I'm brushing with this one. So we'll see how this one, the effect that this one gives. Let me just make sure I've got enough ink on here. Okay. So with this, do you see how this is? There we go. Do you see how that is? That goes on, and I'll zoom you in a little bit more. That goes on quite heavy, pigmented. Of course, remember, keep in mind we're using the oxide, but the brush itself is putting it down a little more heavy because, like I said, it's tight and it's flat. So let's use the other one and see how that goes on. So I'm going to use this one now. I'm going to make sure that there's enough ink on here. And then, do you see how it's going on very lightly? I'm just going to make sure that there's enough ink on the brush. And let's do this. But do you see the bristles, the effect that it's giving? Okay. So it's much lighter. Now we're going to use this one. Just making sure that it has ink. All right, so let's use this one. And you see it's a broader stroke with this bigger brush, and it's much lighter. So you see the variation with the 3 brushes. You've got that one, you've got that one, and that one. So you see the effect that you get with each of them. All right? All right, that's that. So those are the makeup brushes. Now let's move on to the daubers. So this is the one I got from Amazon, which the sponge is flat. So I'm just going to press it in, make sure that the ink is loaded up nice and good on there. And then I'm going to just come down. So you see, it gives a similar effect to that flat brush, but on a wider scale. You see? Now, let's use the domed one. And as I said, this one from scrapbook.com has a rounded top. So I'm just going to make sure that it's inked up. I'm going to be pressing. And I'm pressing. Pressing, pressing, pressing. And I think it's, I must note that this is more spongy than this. This one is more like a cloth material, this domed applicator. This one is true to a sponge type. This one here is more to a cloth type. So you'll see the difference in the application with this domed one. So this is the domed one. It comes down a little bit flat, but do you see how you have to literally turn it to get that ink applied, right? But it's still much lighter than this. Now let's use, last but not least, this brush applicator, which I purchased from Amazon. This is also domed as well. So let me show you that from the side. It has a little domed effect to it. Okay. All right. Let me just rub it in. I was trying to daub it, but let me rub it. And even with rubbing this, I want to show you. You see, even with rubbing it, it doesn't look like there's a whole bunch picking up on it. All right, so let's see how that looks. Do you see the effect that you get with that? I kind of like this nice dust. It gives a dusty, but it's even, but it's dusty. I like this effect. So now we're going to try it with the stencils. I was going to use, and just so you know, you can use these oxides and inks with various stencils. So you can use it with stencils that are detailed like this. And I think it's good to know that you can have these options, because with details like this, you may want to be careful with your stencil. Something that's detailed, you don't want to destroy it, you know, as opposed to rubbing in and then probably pulling at the detail of your stencil and destroying it. You may want to just use something like a makeup brush where you can daub into it and be careful with your stencil. So that's the beauty of having the varying applicators. Sorry, I say too much. I know I do. Forgive me. Okay, so let's use this cloud stencil. And I'm going to use, let me use this one that I just used, because I just feel it's going to give it such a beautiful effect. So we're going to use this one. All right. And I love the powdery effect that it gives. So I'm going to use that. And I'm going to use the second one to it. Okay. And then I'll use the third one. And with this, I'm just coloring half on and half off of the edge of the stencil. That way it gives it that cloud effect. Okay. So do you see this? I love for this effect. It gives that subtle but powdered effect. Do you see that? That nice subtle but even powdery effect. Oh, this is beautiful. So I'm going to actually use the same stencil but a different applicator. I won't use the brushes because I think another brush, because it's basically the same thing, as opposed to if we're using that smaller brush. We don't want to probably used that. So as you use these, you'll know which application you want to use with your stencils to give you the effect and the result that you're looking for. With everything, before you put it onto your layout, you're testing it out on a scrap piece of paper, right? So with the dauber, I'll show you the distinction between that. With the dauber, it'll probably be a little heavier. So let's try it out with the dauber and just see what kind of effect. Do you see that already? It's much heavier. Do you see that? And you can see how it's sitting. I probably need a piece of tissue, which I don't have near me. I should have had that. Let me wipe it over on the side here. Do you see how much heavier that is? And it's so much resting on that sponge that I can still, without re-inking, carry it over to here. And I'm just filling this in to make it look. I won't even go to the third one, but do you see the difference in the applicators? That soft brush versus the dauber. Okay, so that just shows you how it'll be applied using the different applicators. Okay, so that is it for the Distress Oxide inks. I did want to also mention that the other inks that I do use are, see if I can pull them out here. I do have some Archival inks. Now the Archival inks, I don't have too much detail on them, just to let you know that they are permanent. So for instance, I can put, if I put this Distress Oxide ink or the oxide on this mat, I can easily wash it off. It'll come up. But if I put one of these Archival inks on here, it's going to stain it. Why? Because the Archival inks, they're acid free, but they are permanent. It says waterproof, but it does leave a stain. Why? How do I know? Because I did it one day. I put it on here and I was like, I had to get some bleach and actually wash out this mat. So that's the Archival inks. I do use them. They're great for like stamping down stamps. So if you, as opposed to just taking your stamp and putting it on a black ink pad, you can take your stamp and you can use these different colors on your stamps. Okay, so those are the Archival inks, and they come in a variety of colors, far more than what I even have in this collection. I do have another tin, and these I also got from Amazon as well. All right, so we're done with the inks. Now let's look at the colored pencils. I think those will be easy. So the color pencils that I have are the Ohuhu brand. Another good brand to have is the Arteza. Thought I had some Arteza colored pencils. Maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought I did. But I do. Actually, these are not even the colored pencils. My mistake. See? When you have too much. Sorry, I do not have the Ohuhu. I brought these to include these because I'm going to tell you what these are in a moment. Sorry. I have the Arteza colored pencils. This is a very good brand. Another good brand would be, is it Derwent? And also Prismacolor. Prismacolor is another good brand of color pencils, but I have the Arteza brand. And what I love with the color pencils is that in using them, I didn't state, but the oxides and the inks are safe to use on your Bible pages. I know that's a concern for us. We want to decorate our Bibles, or even, some media, whichever media you're using. Your media could be your Bible, it could be your journal, it could be your planner, and you really don't want to see that bleed through, much less ghosting to see bleed through on your pages. Most of the time you may have to use gesso. That's something we'll get into on another video. But for the most part, you will not get a bleed with the Distress Oxide or the Distress ink. Now the Archival ink, you will get a bleed. So you have to be very careful. I would suggest if you wanted to use the Archival ink, you would put it on something that's a very heavy paper, such as this watercolor paper or a cardstock paper, and then do your decoration or whatever it is on that paper, and then fussy cut it out and apply it to your Bible pages or, you know, your paper, because you really don't want that ink to bleed through on the other side. This Archival ink will. These two won't, but this will. Colored pencils are good as well. They will not bleed through your pages. Of course, it is a pencil, so you have to be careful with your pressure. I like the colored pencils because they are also blendable. What do I mean about them being blendable? So let me see if I can get, I want two different blues that you can see how I would blend them. And I love, it goes on very soft and smooth, the Arteza. But these are blendable. As a matter of fact, this pack comes with a blending pencil. So that's one color. This one is of a different color, correct? Yep. So I'm just going to pencil the two together. And it's always good when using your pencils to use them at an angle, the way I'm using them, and to turn them. That way you continually keep the pencil sharp. Turn them as you're using them. And let me see if I can find the blender. The blender I went down on pretty deep. The blender is always going to be white. It says white. Oh, is that the blender? Let me make sure. I would say yes, that's my blender. It says white opaque, but that is the blender that I use. So let me drop these back in here. For these two, do you see how that smooths it out? Zoom you in a bit. Do you see how it smooths out the color pencil? It smooths them both out. It gives it a very smooth effect. Okay? So that's the color pencil, and then you're not going to get a bleed through with this. So whatever you're coloring, you can definitely use colored pencils. Those are one of the, there are certain things that you will want to use colored pencils for. You may use them in your coloring pages if you've got one of the Bibles that have the art in it that just requires you to color it. You may want to use the colored pencils. This would be a great option to use, right? Because you don't want that bleed through, and again, you don't want to damage your page. You want something that's soft enough to color in your art without damaging or bleeding through the page. So colored pencils are a good option. Again, I'm trying not to make this too long. I know it's long enough already. We've already gone into 28 minutes. Let's wrap this up. So these over here, which I thought were pencils, to tell you how long I haven't used them. These are the Ohuhu brand. I love the Ohuhu brand. Probably not thrilled with this particular item, but the other one that I'm going to show you, I love it. Okay, so these are the water-based markers from Ohuhu. Now, let me show you what the water-based markers look like. I always have trouble fitting these back in here. They're water-based, which means that they're not going to bleed through. These do not bleed through. So these would be safe to use on your Bibling pages. Now, caution, they'll be safe to use, but if you're going to be going back and forth and repeating, then you're going to wear down the density of the paper, and of course you're going to start to see some wear and tear and some bleed through. They're water based, which means it will be wet going down on the paper, and you don't want to be using a repeated application. You want to be doing smooth strokes. So this is the Ohuhu, and they're dual tip. So it's a brush marker tip, and then there is the fine tip nib. So the fine tip nib is very fine. I don't think it's even a 0.5, but close to it. I can't remember. But it's a very fine tip nib, which is great for writing. Right? So you've got that option with them. But then you've also got the brush marker tip, which is good for coloring. So you're making smooth strokes. Not repeated back and forth motions, because like I said, if you're using your Bible pages, you'll wear them out. This is a water-based pigment. Right? Let me show you the other color. But unfortunately with the water base, it is not blendable. So that's why you'll see this kind of streaked effect. That's why I tell you it's not my favorite. I have them, you know, to use when I need. Then there'll be instances when you'll know when to use the water-based markers such as these, but do you see that streaked effect? And they are not blendable because they are water-based. Okay? So those are the Ohuhu brand water-based dual tip marker pens. Okay? Brush tip, fine liner. Maybe you may prefer it more for the fine liner. And the fine liner is safe enough to write on your Bible pages and not bleed through as well. Okay, so this is water-based. Last but not least are my absolute favorites. So I'm sure that everyone has heard of Copic markers. Now, Copic markers are quite expensive, quite pricey. But there is a brand that is just as good as Copic. When I tell you just as good, if you took the label off of both brands in the same color, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It's just as good and so far less expensive than the Copic. Oh my goodness. And it's the Ohuhu brand. So Ohuhu has this brand of alcohol-based markers. Oh, I love them. Oh, I just love these. I love them. I love them. I love them because they're blendable. I love them because I just love them. And I'll show you why. This does come with a blender. The blender is the colorless, and it is 0 colorless blender, and it tells you. With the Ohuhu brand, it comes with a chisel tip and a brush tip. Love the brush tip. And I forget how many. I think this is a pack of 55. I'm not sure, but there are larger brands. There are larger packs and smaller packs. If you don't want this big of a pack, there are smaller packs. This is from Amazon. Ohuhu sells out quite often, but they always are good about restocking on Amazon. So with the Ohuhu, let's see if I can just do something here to just make something like maybe like a little flower or something, just so we can just test these out. I'm so in love with them. So we've got a little, I don't know, my little rinky-dink rendition of a flower here. All right. going on outside, but there you can hear some beeping. I don't know what I just drew, but I should have done more than one. Sorry. That's a big space. So let's do that's what I should have done. Thank you for being patient with me. I want to show you the demonstration so that you can get a clear understanding of what these items can do and how you can in turn use them yourself. Awesome. Excuse the jankiness of my drawing, but this is going to be what I can show you in the variation. The color. Okay. I don't know what that looks like, but all right. So we've got a little something something going on here, right? All right, I had to make it look like something. Some kind of flower, something, something, something. All right, so we've got that. Let's do a pretty pink. We've got all these variations of pink. Let's test them out, see which ones we want to use. I know we are quite lengthy here, but let's see. It's blendable, which is what I love. And let's see this one. Yes, I want those two. This has a lot of red in it though. Let's see if I want this one. No, that's too dark. Go back. See what this one looks like. And you have to be careful opening. You see when it's so juicy, when you open it, you see how it's splattered onto the page? You have to be so. Okay, so we'll work with these. So let's do this. I love them because of the blendability of them. I just love it. And it goes down so smooth, but here's the thing. You cannot use these in your Bible pages. So here's what I do. I use them in the Bible pages, but not without gesso. Or I will use it on something that's like this watercolor paper. And then what I'll do is to fussy cut this out and then put it onto my layout because I don't want that bleed through. These are alcohol based. They will bleed through, and I'll show you how much of a bleed through they can give you. So I can actually go over this and blend the two together. So I'm taking the lighter color, but I am blending all three of these colors together. Do you see this? I am blending all three of these colors. Do you see how it just blends in? I'm blending them all together. Now, I'm not going to color in this whole thing, but I'm just trying to give you enough of an idea to see how you can use this. So instead of there being that disparity between the colors, well, all I'm doing is taking the lighter color and I'm just blending them all in together, even the ones that I've drawn already. And you can do this with the lighter color, and you can also do it with the blending brush that I showed to you, which was the one that's labeled 0. So that is the beauty of it. Look at this. I'm not even going to go any further. That's just what I wanted to show you. Look at how I blended that. Do you see the variation in colors, but it's still blending into each other? That's the beauty of an alcohol-based marker. We have gotten to 40 minutes, and I apologize for these being so long, but as I told you, this is just part 1. I don't want to just give you the items that I'm using and not show you how to use them. I want to be detailed. So I apologize if these videos are so long. And if you have lasted with me this long, you're a trooper. I ask you to go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel and you have not subscribed, go ahead and give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll be notified the next time I upload a video, and even part 2, because part 2, we're going to be looking at paints, watercolor paints, acrylic paints. We're going to be looking at the, oh gosh, I forget the name already, but there are a couple things that we're going to be looking at in part 2 as far as your coloring tools. So you don't want to miss that. Anyway, I've been on here long enough. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.